The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. Why don't we just wait here for a little while, see what happens?
Do you want to die, Sidney?
For England, James? No.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Look what you did to him!
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
As you can see, I'm not happy.
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Macho Movie Madness podcast. I am Brandon, and alongside me always is Andrew. Andrew, what's up?
What's going on? Ready to review some WCW?
Yes, some old school WCW. We've talked about this a couple times here prior to this, and so I think we're going to do a little bit of WCW Bash at the Beach 2000 today.
Oh yeah,
and we talked about doing something bad and something good, maybe like the next week, and just kind of back and forth. We've even talked about doing a maybe this month in wrestling history or something, because we're going to be looking at more old school wrestling or older shows than we will newer stuff, unless the newer stuff is actually worth talking about. So we both watched,
which is very rare.
And we're going to run through it. Yes, very rare. But the past were not without some bad wrestling shows and pay-per-views. WCW was a main proponent of this in the late 90s, early 2000s, right before it was sold to WWF. And WWF had their share in the early mid-90s as well. Just really rough around that time. We'll get to that, I'm sure, in the future. We both watched this show, and we will give ratings like we did for WrestleMania matches, show ratings, talk about it a little bit. Interesting enough, though, this wasn't complete gaga. Like, there's a lot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a complete just trash show, surprisingly, for the Russo era WCW that we like to crap on. This was definitely a... and you'll find out by the end, but it's definitely one of those A+ for effort kind of shows, but maybe like a C for execution.
At best.
At best. But, it definitely could have been a lot better, definitely could have been a lot worse. We don't, and I'm sure there'll be times in the future where we'll have maybe more of a background to the show, or maybe some, leading up to stuff we know a little bit better. We might have something leading up to these matches, a little bit storyline for you. This time around, I didn't really have a lot. This time, it's been so long since I've seen that era of WCW. I don't have a lot of, we're going to talk about what we do have as far as the famous incident that happened at this show, but we don't have anything really much build other than. But if you've seen it, or if you haven't, I recommend going and watching it. And they'll play packages and stuff.
And my frame of
a little bit of rundown.
My frame of reference here is kind of blurry because this show happened on a Sunday, and the next Saturday I was getting married. So my head was not in wrestling so much at the time.
Right.
I saw a little bit of what was going on, but I wasn't keeping up with WCW as much. I've gone back and watched it retroactively, but. So that's where I'm at.
Watching it every week, I watched it every week at that point in time, but I can't. It's such a blur. That last year or so of WCW was such a blur for me.
So many starts and stops and resets. It's insane.
Yeah, there's a lot of. Yeah, and the new blood just didn't do it for me like the old blood did, and the old blood kind of trickled in and out around this time. And anyway, so we'll get into this. Bash of the Beach 2000 was a July 9th pay-per-view in Daytona Beach, Florida, which was the site 4 years prior. This is a little backstory that I do have, that Hulk Hogan, who would be in the show later, turned heel and joined the NWO for the first time against Randy Savage. So that's a little bit of history.
You got the birth of the NWO and kind of the death of WCW all in the same building.
Yes. And this is interesting. Wikipedia is obviously an excellent source. But it says the attendance was 6,572. So I don't know what they could hold in that building. But,
about 10. About 8 to 10 in that building. Okay. So Ocean Center was the venue. So okay, not awful, but not great considering the height of wrestling at that time. So that shows you the company in its state, right? I think is what that kind of shows you, because you would have them packed to the rafters in that if it would have been 2 years prior, I think. Yeah.
So we are going to move right along here. This is the pay-per-view that they've talked about. It was the last Bash at the Beach, for good or bad. A lot of interesting things happened in it. Well, a few interesting things happened here. A little bit of controversy with Russo and Hulk Hogan and Jeff Jarrett. I highly recommend, before we get started, after this even, to check out some stuff online. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there, maybe even podcasts with Vince Russo, who talks about this and his side of the story. Hulk Hogan, of course, is going to have his side of the story, which I'm sure will favor him tremendously. And Jeff Jarrett's got his new podcast with Conrad Thompson, and they go over what their angle was. So anyway, I recommend hitting all of that up for this, and we'll explain a little bit what we do know a little bit later. So before we get started, I know I keep holding it off. I'm leaving everybody in suspense. I just want to let you know that Macho Movie Madness podcast, I didn't really do this in the last episode, but I just want to remind everybody that when we do release them right now, it's going to be every other week, and we're hoping to get to one a week. You can find us now at pretty much every streaming platform for podcast platform out there. Pandora, iHeart, Apple, Google, Samsung, you name it, Spotify. We're there, and they're there day one. We got video episodes that go up on YouTube later, usually about a week or two later. But if you want to check those out the same day as audio, then you can join Patreon, and we will, in the Macho Movie Madness Patreon, we will have those available day one, and plus a couple of little perks. So anyway, I wanted to go ahead and remind everybody of that before we get started. Let's get started with the very first match of the night, which was Lieutenant Loco versus Juventud Guerrera, and it's Chavo Guerrero versus Juventud. And I gotta say, before the match gets started, we get the Filthy Animals, which by now I forgot all about the Filthy Animals.
Yeah,
Juventud, and Conan.
Rey Mysterio with the
unmasked
horn.
Rey Mysterio with the horns. He was unmasked. Would have Major Guns, or was that on the other team? I think that was the other team.
No, Major Guns.
Anyway,
Private
Major
Stash
Guns was in there too, right? Private Stash, yes. Disco Inferno.
Oh no, Major Guns was on the other team. I've got it backwards, don't I?
Okay. Yeah, I think you do. Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm getting confused already. So, yeah. But Disco Inferno in the Filthy Animals is, I forgot all about it, and hilarious at this point. So that's funny. Conan was shooting a promo, doing his normal shtick, at the beginning before the match started, and Dis goes out there repeating everything he says, really trying to get the hype going, and Ray's just back there, just like, "What are you doing?" And this whole, like, did you
like the worst
that?
hype man ever.
He's like, "What are you?" He's back there laughing. He's like, "What are you?" Hey, so like he would say something, and then Ray would be like, "Hey, what are you doing, man?"
Yeah, boy.
and Dis he just kept going. I was a big fan of Juventud back in the day. I thought Juventud was pretty awesome.
He was. I didn't like his ripoff of The Rock's character, and I never understood the juice thing. I guess I didn't watch enough of that area to get that, but I didn't. Yeah, I mean, just as far as in ring work goes, he was really good.
He was great. I noticed he dropped the people's elbow in this match here. So Chavo gets the win over Juventud in this match at 12:07, wins the Cruiserweight Championship. And Andrew, what'd you think about this match?
I thought it was pretty good. I thought, to quote Jim Cornette, I thought there was a little too much gaga going on. You got the Filthy Animals. Yeah, you got the Filthy Animals coming back in masks, and then you've got Misfits in Action coming back in like Bill Clinton masks, and it really kind of overshadowed a pretty decent match.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad match, and Chavo's always in good matches, really. The work for both of those guys is usually pretty great. But yeah, it's a lot of gaga. And of course, the announcers playing it up, like, the heel announcers, "Oh my God, who's these guys?" And then Shivani's like, "Really?" Like, obviously, this is the Filthy Animals in masks. Conan's coming out with the arm wrap, that he had on earlier.
Yeah. There's many times in the show where they go back to the announce table, and you see Tony Schiavone, and he looks like he just wants to crawl under a rock. What's going on at half of this stuff at various points throughout the show.
Yeah, it's funny. I defended him because when he joined AEW, because I saw him, like, there's some shows where he just kind of sitting there leaning on a table, or like, with his arms crossed and just, doing his shtick, ladies and gentlemen, this and that, and he's got his arms crossed like he's just bored and not professional. Of course, back in the early WCW days, in Mid-Atlantic or whatever, he's got the mustache and he's, just as serious as a heart attack. Yeah. And, I'm like, he wasn't always like this, but, then you go back to WCW 2000 and he's pretty much just like he is now in AEW, just like, this is bullshit, so I'm just going to go with it. I'm just getting paid, man.
At one point later in the show, when the big incident happens, he's just got his face in his hands, like, what do we do with this? What direction am I supposed to take this?
We're just all going to... we're going to sit here and talk like a panel discussion here. I go, well, this wasn't scripted, guys. This did not happen this was not talked about to us in our production meeting. Like, they're really giving it away now.
Yeah.
I mean, which they did. They spit on kayfabe like just crazy in this show. A little bit later. So anyway, that match, the match overall was decent, like you said. A lot of gaga. It hurts it a little bit. I'd give it probably about 2.5 stars.
Yeah. I really wanted to go 3.
Could have been a little bit higher without the gaga. Yeah.
I really wanted to go 3, but with all that stuff at the end, I had to go 2 3/4. So I thought the match itself was pretty good, and probably a little too much, kicking out of finishes and stuff, but still pretty solid, decent opener.
Yeah. The next match, Big Vito and Norman Smiley and Ralphus. Just a weird hardcore match for the Hardcore Championship, the WCW Hardcore Championship. I didn't like this one. I don't hate hardcore matches, and even back in the day, I loved hardcore matches. This has been right up my alley, probably as a kid. But you got to also like the participants. Not that I don't like Norman Smiley to a degree, I guess, but it's just kind of goofy.
Yeah. I didn't like the way that
Ralph's character looked like he was.
I didn't like the way that WCW used to do their hardcore matches, where they'd start off in the backstage area and then fight their way to the ring. Kind of like that Boiler Room match. I didn't care for the presentation, how they did that back in the day.
No, I didn't much either. And I thought the ending was a little bit weird. So Big Vito gets up on the turnbuckle, puts Ralphus on a table, comes off on a splash through the table, pins Ralphus. Norman Smiley is like carrying a chair or something to the ring, like he's, getting involved. And I don't know if he missed the spot or if he wasn't hustling, because he just sat there and watched Ralphus get pinned. And then, like, as soon as he saw him go for the pin, he's like, oh crap. And he had to like run up to the apron. And by the time he got to the ropes,
I think the whole thing was he was supposed to have been stuck in the elevator backstage and had to find his way back. But the whole thing came off as clunky.
Yeah, it was clunky, and Ralph, I love that. I love that the announcers during the table spot at the end, like, oh my God, Vito's looking to end Ralphus's career, and then one of them pretty much said what I was thinking, like, what career? like, no one knows who Ralphus is. Like, what career are you talking about?
Somebody doing WCW's books is like, oh crap, we still got this guy under contract. We better do something with him.
Dude, you know what? Going back through these old shows, I'm going to shit on a lot of this, I'm sure, as we go along, and the future shows for obvious reasons. I think I'm going to still have a lot of fun with it, because it's like the wild, wild west. Like, everything was just so insane that even the announcers are like, well, we're going to say whatever we think, and no one's going to do a damn thing about it.
Yeah. And of these three, of course, Norman Smiley was all right. I was surprised Vito didn't go on to bigger things, because he was fairly solid in the ring. He didn't have much as far as a mouthpiece. He
did wind up in WWE. And he was Big Vito, I believe, in WWE, which I think he had a WWF run before that for just a really small minute, and then an ECW run, and then I think he went to TNA. He just jumped. He was one of those that jumped around.
Didn't he wear a dress or something? I think he was a full. I remember.
Yeah, I
remember going to like a Raw SmackDown TV taping, and he wrestled like the dark match in a dress or something. But I always thought, I think should have been bigger.
I think there was some kind of story there trying to be goofy, and I think it had to do with some SmackDown stuff. Orlando Jordan or Paul Burchill or something. I don't know. I can't remember all that. That's been a while back. That was probably like 2005 or 6 or because but he was like a full-blooded Italian with Nunzio or something, maybe. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think.
Well, and then he was part of the Mamalukes in WCW with Johnny the Bull and Tony Mamaluke. I think they were tag team champions.
Yeah. I think you're right. But he could have been a lot better, and he probably would have benefited more in today's wrestling than back then, because you get lost in the crowd when you don't have a personality. Yeah. I think he would have been probably a Rusev type heel or something maybe nowadays, but back then those characters, in a time where sports entertainment and craziness was happening, and it wasn't just your in-ring stuff was getting over, it was your promos and your character. Those people just fall by the wayside. Those are the ones that are getting jobbed out, or just real low mid-card stuff. But WCW would have been the only place for him to get on a pay-per-view probably here,
Yeah. He had done a little work with ECW before this, but they had pretty much just jobbed him out to like Sid when he was there and a few other people. So, it's weird that he got his biggest push here.
Yeah. That it's that New Blood thing they were probably trying. So 1 star for me. You know what? I'll give it a half star. I can't do the 1 star. Yeah. It's a half star. It wasn't executed well.
This one to me is no stars. It's I hate to do that, but it's
just a plain zip.
Even the stuff backstage was like,
shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, it's like you got Ralphus hiding behind a garbage can lid for like 30 seconds waiting for the punch to come, and it was just sloppy.
Yeah, it was bad. It was a bad deal. I've seen Norman Smiley do some better things and be involved in some funny. So you can't take the guy serious that much. He's a decent little worker for the role he's supposed to play, but here it just was. Man, you could tell everybody was just kind of running with their head cut off, and low on fumes or something. I don't know. It was just you could tell the difference in that probably about summer, about this time, all the way to the end until that last show in Panama. It really just turned a big corner, which it was already turning, but you could really notice. So next up, talk about Gaga, but at least it's Gaga that's decent to look at. It's decent to look at. So Daphne and Miss Hancock in a wedding gown match. For those out there who don't remember Miss Hancock, it is Stacy Keibler. And looking very good in a wedding gown. And
they're fighting for the hand of David Flair.
They're fighting for the hand of David Flair, who was no Ric Flair, but he tried to be a little bit. Everybody involved, the run-ins ended up with their pants off too. Like everybody just took their pants off. The referee had his pants ripped off. David Flair had his pants ripped off. The other guy come out and looked around and
Crowbar.
He's like, well, Crowbar. He's like, I'll just look around. And then he just like, well, I guess I'll take mine off too. And he was like playing the crowd with it. So he just dropped his pants. And
the referee had his referee shirt tucked in his underwear. Did you notice that?
Yes, I did.
It was wild.
And he's like covering himself up like he's embarrassed. Like, no one does that, dude. You should be embarrassed. You should be embarrassed. David Flair. Oh, man. Everybody ended up getting cake in the face by the end of it. Like I said, you know what? And I will say that Stacy Keibler, at least at this time, pre-Dudley's, could not take a bump. Even just like that head bashing on the mat bump. Terrible. But boy, she could throw some kicks. I mean, I was like, I kind of
kicks and stomps. Yeah,
her stomps, like at times, Jim Cornette and guys like that always gave Austin for having terrible stomps in the corner, and they look like shit. They say, and I can see that. I thought her stomps looked great. That was about the only. Well, that wasn't the only thing, but other moves wise, she did the handspring elbow thing. That's all right. That's okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that she had that much in her back in that day, back in the WCW days. Daphne, I don't think Daphne's bad. It's just this whole thing was just stupid.
Yeah,
it was just silly.
Ill-conceived.
Just your tip. Yeah, it was your typical like filler Monday Night War type stuff. Back in the day before women got their big shot at wrestling.
And the big spot at the end with the cake all over the place. I mean, literally all over the place, and they couldn't get it cleaned up. I was talking to my wife about this. Me and her actually watched this. My wife, as a side hustle, she decorates cakes. And I'm like, how in the world are they not being able to, clean this up with water? I guess you make a lot of icing out of shortening, which is basically like throwing water on grease and trying to clean it up out there. Yeah. So I'm surprised there weren't more mishaps later on in the show.
Yeah. There was a little bit of cakeage on some trunks later that we'll talk about. But yeah, you're right. So I'm going to give this one a 1 star. And the only reason I give it a star is because of Stacy Keibler. That's it. Because of the legs.
Yeah.
It's 1 star. It's, it's 5-star legs in a 1-star match. So that's pretty much what it is.
I'm not going to be quite so giving on this one. And I think most people, when you give a 0 star or a negative star, they call it a dud. I say in honor of this show, we call it a Russo. So yeah. I'm going to give this one.
Russo rating?
Yeah, I'm going to give this one 1 Russo.
One steaming pile of Russo. Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you there. I was pretty generous, but
them legs, baby.
Them legs, baby. She got the legs. ZZ Top said it best. So next up, Chronic. It's Brian Adams and Brian Clark.
The Bryans
versus The Perfect Event. This is Chuck Palumbo and Sean Stasiak. You may know Sean Stasiak as Meat from WWF. And it's pretty front as Meat. Actually, no one's going to know that except for a few of us.
Like us.
He was also Sean Stasiak then too. I think the Meat was a really short-lived thing with a PMS or something, which was Jacqueline and Terry Runnels. Chuck Palumbo, he goes on to do a few things for WWF again later on. He does the he does a few things, and one of them's the gay couple with
Billy and Chuck.
Billy and Chuck. I'm pretty sure that Chuck Palumbo was the stand-in cameraman that took the Undertaker bump at WrestleMania 25 when he dove out at Shawn Michaels about landing on his head. I think
that makes sense because they're both biker guys.
Yeah.
So there's probably mutual respect there.
Probably so. So he just like, I'm going to catch Undertaker, and he did. He's a
guy that I always expected bigger things from, and I don't know if that Billy and Chuck thing killed it, but you look at him here and he looks like $1 million, and he could actually work a little bit through a really good super kick.
Yeah, he can.
In this day and age, that's all you got to do.
Yeah, slap legs. This was actually not a bad match. I didn't hate this. I had a problem. I had a problem with the majority of these matches, in that there were so many false finishes and near falls that it took away from. It's like it's almost, and it's out of all the bad things they took out of WCW and kept going over the last 20 years. I don't know why this was one of them. You shouldn't probably take anything out of WCW 2000 and utilize it anywhere anymore in wrestling. but it was, a lot of these matches felt like today's matches. Did you feel that way too a little bit?
Just all the busyness going on,
just
stuff,
the busyness,
the run-ins,
and even if it wasn't for the run-ins was definitely a product of that time too, and WWF was just as guilty. But yeah, just the false finishes, man. It wasn't like, I don't know, it's just weird, man. They kicked out of everything. Everybody did. And there was a few spots where I was like, okay, that should have been the finish, because this guy won anyway, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. The ending of this match, this tag match, was a little goofy, because they hit the double choke slam on Stasiak, which kind of looked like a Wish version of Billy Gunn here with his big tall white boots, and his hair. He looked like Billy Gunn before Billy Gunn did in 2002 or whatever. Really, he was about 2 years early, and they hit that on that, and then Palumbo come in and broke it up, and then they hit Palumbo with they knock him out, and they hit Palumbo with the double choke slam, and then Stasiak, I don't know, something happens again. And they wind up. I think they wind up with Stasiak outside the ring, and then they do another finisher, which was a decent finisher, where one power bombed and then it was a top rope neck breaker and power bomb,
like the combo. Doomsday device, yeah,
kind of, yeah. It was kind of like that for the win, and that was a decent finish. Yeah. But before that, just getting there was a little bit wonky for a minute.
Yeah,
I still like the match. I don't think it was the worst match of the night for sure. Not that it's saying much yet, but I'll give it a 2.5. Wasn't that bad.
There was a lot to what you said there about kicking out of things. There was also a move that didn't get called because nobody knew what it was. Did you see the F5 in the match?
Yes.
Like 2 years before Brock Lesnar. I'm sure somebody out there in the comments is probably going to say some obscure Japanese promotion somebody had done that in, But yeah, that's the first time I'd ever seen an F5 in, July of 2000. It's like, wow, where did he pull that one out of?
It was a cool move.
But
and there were... Go ahead.
It was a pretty good match, as far as tag teams. And this shows you how far the tag team division in WCW had slipped. You've got 10 or 11 matches on this show. You've got one tag team match. I was looking at. I'm like, am I reading that right? Is there one tag team match on this entire? There was, and it was okay for what it was. It could have been a little hotter.
Yeah.
I don't know. Overall, I give this one a 2 out of 5. It was pretty. It was decent. Nothing to write home about. Decent.
One thing I really did listen to the crowd, because that was one thing I wanted to do, just to kind of see what people thought of the show back then. And, as long as there was no piping business, they seemed to dig most of it.
Yeah.
That's one thing about a lot of WCW fans back in the day, or wrestling fans in general. If they supported you, they supported you. It was, a lot of people supported that company a lot of people left, but a lot of people still supported it all the way to the end, and were pretty diehard WCW to the end. Some of these guys got pretty decent pops, and Chronic, I think, got a good reaction for the most part. There was a scene where Bryan Adams military pressed, I think it was Stasiak, over the ropes onto Palumbo outside, and I thought that was a great spot because I mean Stasiak's not a slouch. Was it Stasiak or was it Palumbo?
Yeah.
I think it was Stasiak.
Yeah.
So like I said, Stasiak's a pretty beefy guy, and Bryan Adams is a big guy. They were all big guys.
Pretty meaty, you might say.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That was good. Yeah, he's pretty meaty.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a good spot. I thought I was pretty impressed with that.
And that was the one where Palumbo got up and had cake all over the back of his tights. Didn't notice it till later in the match. He's like, "What is this?"
Yeah, what the hell is this? So I don't think we mentioned it yet. Chronic beats. I think I might have earlier. They got the win with that power bomb combo, neckbreaker combo. I did say that earlier for the tag team championships, WCW tag team championship. Okay, match. So next up, I believe, was Chris Kanyon versus Booker T.
Yes.
Booker T was starting to get really hot about this time. People really start getting behind him, which I mean, they've been behind him because of, Harlem Heat and all that, but he was starting to get a big singles push around this time. And Chris Kanyon was doing the DDP gimmick, the DDP knockoff gimmick. Thought that was kind of interesting. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he had a mock-up of his book, and it was so thick that they could put a brick in it, and you couldn't tell the difference.
Even his look, his music, his the diamond cutter, the canyon cutter, or whatever he was calling it. He actually beat Booker T with a little bit of help from from Ernest Cat Miller. Didn't he help him out, or somebody? Who else helped?
Oh no, it was Jarrett at the end with the guitar.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's right. He gave Jarrett a good guitar shot, which I guess in hindsight makes sense.
This was another one of those matches that was pretty good, but yeah, there was still too much gaga, too much stuff.
Yeah.
Too many moving parts.
A lot of run-ins. In this. And I also noticed throughout the night that everything was like no DQ, basically, or not getting called. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of weapons and things being used, and nothing was getting called. I'm like, when did this become a no? No one said anything about a no DQ.
ECW all of a sudden.
It's just everybody was just like, hell, just go with it. It's fine.
Speaking of,
it doesn't. The book. You don't need to explain it. It's just booked that way.
There's a spot earlier in the match where Booker T picks up the book, and then the brick falls out, and it ends up back in the corner. Kanyon picks it up, doesn't feel the weight difference, and clocks Booker in the head, and he sells it.
The same.
Yeah, and then he kicks out, and Canyon's like, "What the heck?" Like he never any the wiser than the.
And that's when I really started noticing the false finishes in this. Like they started heating that up.
Yeah. But this match is probably my second favorite match on the show. No, I'll say it's my third favorite match on the show. I like that first one quite a bit too. But I thought like this was a missed opportunity where you see where they went at the end of the show with who they went with and who interfered. Jarrett interfered at the end of this match. Right. And you've got Kanyon picking up a clean win over Booker T. Rational booking would say Canyon's probably in line for a title shot somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I didn't watch it religiously, but I know they never did a pay-per-view or anything. That's booking 101. Kanyon should get the next shot, But they didn't go that way, and that's kind of weird to me.
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't think they had a lot of forethought because there was a lot of people with creative control at that time, and other people were like, "Well, there's nothing we can do about it." I guess for some reason, WCW gave them contracts where they have full say. What the hell? Anyway, so next is do we rate this? I don't.
We need to rate it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna rate this one probably I'll probably give this about a 3. I thought this was an okay, fun match.
Yeah, I'm gonna rate it tied with the opener, 2 3/4. I want to give it a 3. There were some spots that were just kind of clunky.
Yeah, and I don't mind the interference given what we get later, and we'll go over that. Real quick before we move on to the next match, I also haven't I mentioned the Cat, Ernest the Cat Miller, and I forgot he was the commissioner at this time, playing commissioner, just goofy. He came out and got involved in in one of the matches, and I don't know, it was goofy. Not big on that whole thing. There
was a whole deal with him and the Young Dragons, and
yes.
Apparently there was something that happened the Thursday Night Thunder before, and I guess you had to see it to be in on the joke, the running gag of them hunting him all throughout the show.
Yeah.
But there's also another part that pertains to this match where Jarrett kept bringing the fat lady in because she was gonna sing when Hogan's career was over. Was that where you were taking this?
Yeah, well, that's eventually getting there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he kept telling the Cat, "I'm going to screw with your show," and then he comes in the very next match and smashes Booker and costs him that match with Canyon. So that's where all that came from.
The fat lady will sing tonight, buddy. Gosh, that was kind of goofy too. I forgot about the fat lady.
Yeah,
the fat lady.
And then Mike Awesome hitting on the fat lady.
Yes. God. Yeah, the only part I did find funny about the Cat Miller and the Young Dragons was the guy who was holding like a little leaf up. He was holding that like part of a palm tree up, basically. Looked like and he was just kind of holding it up to his face, but he was standing right there. And Ernest the Cat
got to be a ninja.
Walks by. Yeah, he's walking by, and the guy's just kind of looking. Something you'd see in a Leslie Nielsen movie or something. So speaking of Mike Awesome, that's the next match. Mike Awesome versus Scott Steiner. So there's no disqualifications, but this match ended disqualification.
Right.
Like it just we're not going to call it until it's time. I guess.
You guys can low blow each other, hit each other with chairs, do whatever you want, but
oh my God, they were low blowing the shit out. God, this whole night was just low blows after low blows and bells and chairs,
and kicking out. I guarantee.
Kicking it. Oh my gosh!
I guarantee I don't see you from behind and you come up and hit me in the nuts from behind, you're going to be able to get a 3 count on me. There's no kicking out.
Yeah. There's no preparedness there. Yeah, it's definitely happened. Mike Awesome. Forgot about Mike Awesome, actually. All right. He's not awesome, in my opinion, but he's not bad. Love Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner was coming into his own these last couple years here, 98 through 2000, getting the goatee with the blonde hair, and he was a big part of WCW around this time, as far as main event goes, or big storylines and stuff. Jeff Jarrett, those were kind of the guys you see of the old guard that were still playing that leadership role in the show, or the top dogs of the show, since most of the other ones were just in and out.
I'm actually higher on Mike Awesome than you are. Have you ever seen any of his matches in ECW with Masato Tanaka for the world title?
No, I will say I haven't.
Those are just brutal. Like really? Anything you see in any other hardcore match, they're taking power bombs off the top rope over the top rope to the outside through tables and stuff. It's brutal. But you'll have to check those out.
Yeah, I'll have to check them out. I'll have to check them out.
And that's what I liked about this match. It was just like a big, brutal hoss fight, up until the end. Lot of going through the crowd, a lot of suplexes and throws, and it was just real high impact. And I really liked it until the end.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think it's 2 3/4 star match. Of course, Mike Awesome did get the win here over Scott Steiner because of the disqualification. And this was for the United States Championship. Kind of some screwy work going on here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of championship matches on this pay-per-view.
It was screwy because the whole deal with the Steiner recliner, which of course is one of my least favorite finishers of all time, because the way he puts it on, I mean, he looks impressive with the muscles, but the way he just stands over him and he doesn't really set back on it, it could look so much more if he just applied himself.
If he'd sit down and arch it.
Yeah, apparently, the Cat had banned the Steiner recliner and everything.
Yes,
and
I forgot to mention that.
I really think this is how, because Steiner had that United States title. I think this is a way to get the title off him without pinning him, because he was in line for the world title down the road, and they knew that. And this is a way to get him out still looking somewhat strong and still, like he doesn't care about anything. Rules are
right.
But I'd also give it 2 3/4. No, I'll go 2.5. That ending kind of throws it for me. I understand why they did that ending, but all the constant low blows and just the silly ending in the no disqualification match just ruins it a little bit for me.
Yeah, I agree. So next up, Vampiro versus the Demon, the Kiss Demon. Graveyard match. This looked like it was something out of, one of those COVID cinematic matches or something that TNA, Broken Matt Hardy used to put on, but not as good.
Lit worse.
I think the atmosphere looked okay, but but the lighting was bad. Of course, you had the camera work wasn't there, and the quality obviously wasn't there for stuff like that back then. I don't hate Vampiro. The Demon's just kind of a crazy character that, is going to help sell merchandise. I don't really not into him as much, but this was just not. This is not for me, dog.
No.
It's not for me, dog. I don't like giving 0 stars, but I'm giving this 0 star.
Yeah,
I could have played out so much better.
I can honestly say I've never seen a Vampiro match that I've liked. He's a cool looking character, but I don't think he's much of a worker. And we were just talking about Mike Awesome. I remember I used to trade tapes and stuff on the internet, and so I'd get all these weird promotions. And so I was watching MLW one time, and you've got a world title match. I think it's Vampiro and Mike Awesome, and you think that would be a good match on paper, and he's not a good worker. He's got to be the ring general in that match, because I don't think Torborg was basically a rookie, right? Didn't he come in like the year before? I don't know how much independent work he had done.
It was like 99, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't either.
When Kiss showed up on Nitro. This one gets 1 Russo for me.
Yeah, for sure. Then there was, we'll just go ahead and get out of the way now. I think there was something on the show a little bit later where Vampiro comes back out. He made it back from the graveyard. He defeated the Demon, and then there was some kind of shenanigans where he gets, like, I guess, what was it, beat up and put in a coffin or whatever by
like 20 stings.
By a gang of stings and Sting masks. Played up that Sting might be in one of those, those people or something. I don't know, but no Sting.
They were all in masks, so you couldn't tell.
Yeah. The one guy with the long hair right there was right there in front, kind of looked like it, but yeah, it was just not good. Moving on. So Shane Douglas versus Buff Bagwell. Okay, so I like Buff Bagwell. I don't love him, but I like Buff Bagwell. Okay, he's got an all right gimmick here for this time frame, and he's not really that bad in the ring. He's been around for a while at this point, probably 10, 12 years at least, right? As Marcus Bagwell. And still looks young and good in this match. Shane Douglas looking a little older, but still in really good shape. I don't think the match was great, but I don't think the match was good. Or I don't think it was bad. It wasn't bad. I still can't give it more than a 2 point, probably 2 1/4. Yeah. I think it was an okay match. Of course, you got some hooey at the end with Tori Wilson.
Tori Wilson,
who also looked good. I can't give any points for this match just because she looks good, though. I already did that for Stacy Keibler. I have to draw the line and be, I gotta. Anyway, definitely.
And there's that wonky finish with Tori where she lays one on Buff, and it's all a swerve, bro. So she
Yeah,
can
it's a
get back
swerve,
with
bro.
double cross him and get back with Douglas. It's dumb.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, just right up behind him, kicks him in the old grapefruits.
And that's one that he actually didn't get up from. But to me, I would have not had this match on the card at all. Like, personally, I'm not a fan of Buff Bagwell, never have been. Definitely not as much as you. Shane Douglas, to me, was the least interesting ECW champion of all time. I think he's completely overrated. I would have taken these 8 minutes that they put in this match and given 5 of them to Booker and Jarrett at the end, and given another 3 to the match coming up between Goldberg and Kevin Nash.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because those are your two money drawing stuff matches anyway. Shane Douglas beats Buck Bagwell in 7:52. Just a singles match here. No championships or anything else.
One star.
One star. No, what did I say? I said 2 1/4, right? You know what?
You're changing your mind now, aren't you?
Yeah, now that there's some memories flooding back here, I think I do like Buff Bagwell. I don't think Shane Douglas is that bad in the ring. I think he's all right. I don't think he's great. I do agree about the overrated ECW champion thing. But yeah, 2 1/4 might be too generous. I'd probably drop it to a 1.75.
Yeah, I think I'm still upset. Like, he got hurt. Shane Douglas got hurt in like May of '98, and they kept the belt, the ECW title, on him that entire year without him making a defense. And it was just, they made Taz like the interim FTW champion or whatever, and it's just like, man, you got RVD who's so hot over here. It just and Taz, it made no sense just to keep it on him so they could get that Taz Shane Douglas match. But I digress.
That doesn't sound interesting at all. Anyway, so next up is what the big where the big controversy starts of the show. This is for the WCW World Championship match. They said throughout the night they weren't even sure if Hogan was going to show up or not. Because he didn't want to face Jarrett or something weird. I mean, real storyline was he didn't want to drop the belt he didn't have the belt. He didn't want to walk out of there without the belt. He wanted to beat Jarrett for the belt and have the belt back. Russo claims that his idea the entire time was to make sure Jarrett won so he could give it to Booker. That was the deal. That Hogan was not, by any stretch of the imagination, he was not walking out with that belt that night, no matter what. He said, and he even said that he was willing to do whatever it took to make Hogan happy, as long as the outcome, whatever kind of fuckery they needed, whatever. But as long as Hogan did not walk out with that belt, he didn't care what they had to do to make him look good or whatever. That's what he claims. I don't know what everybody else claims. I know that I think Jarrett was pretty disgusted about the whole thing. I think he was disappointed in himself a little bit, I feel like, because he knew he's
you can tell when he rolls out of that ring after taking that pin, he's not happy.
He's not happy. He looks mad and pretty disgusted that it has to even go down that way. I don't think he was involved in the process. He didn't really even know what was going on until Russo claims that he didn't know until after he called him, I think, or told him what was actually going on. So he gets in there. Now, what they come up with, I guess, is Hogan was going to walk out. It's going to be a work shoot. And then Hogan was going to walk out. Jarrett was going to lay down and take the pin. He was going to get the belt. They were going to do this thing where Hogan says something to Russo about, the shape of everything, which he does. And that was going to be it. And they were going to figure something out for later. And he was supposed to call Hogan after the fact, I guess, for to figure that out, right? To see what's next. Now, what happens was, this is all just Russo's side, but he claims that he didn't call Hogan, and he was busy with, the show with Nitro, and I guess Spiegel, who was the head?
Brad Siegel.
Brad Siegel, thank you. So he claims that Brad Siegel told him at the time that Hogan was too expensive. We didn't want him on the show. We can't pay him. This is the point where we can no longer afford Hogan. Don't call him back. And he said he probably should have called him back just because he gave his word, but he didn't. And also he also cut a promo on Hogan a little bit later after the whole thing, which Hogan supposedly didn't know about, and then ended up, between that and then everything else, ended up suing him for defamation. Ended up suing Russo. So he comes out there. Everybody's probably gathered by now. Hogan comes out. Jarrett lays down. Hogan acts all pissed. Russo throws the belt in and says, "Here you go," and walks out kind of pissed. And then Hogan, to make sure he didn't get any on him, he pretended to be mad about it and said, this is why the company's in the shape it is, because of all this bullshit right here. And just disgusted with everything, he still puts his leg on Jarrett's chest. He just steps on him and pins him. And then just shaking his head and walks off. And then, like you said earlier, Jarrett rolls out, absolutely pissed and disgusted, takes off. Then Hogan takes off. Then that's rough, man. That's rough. To go ahead and get it out of the way right after the Goldberg match, I think, right? Or is it right before?
It's right before. And I think it was actually before the end of that Vampiro, because they meet each other in the hallway as Hogan's leaving.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we already covered the Vampiro part, but yeah, right. So the Vampiro segment with Sting, the Stings happen, and then Russo runs back out and then cuts this promo that Hogan supposedly doesn't know about, basically saying the piece of shit left the arena, he's gone, and as far as I'm concerned, he's not the real champion. He'll never be in a WCW ring again. He didn't want to do business, yada, yada, yada. And I recommend everybody go check it out. It's actually, to give him props this time around, it was a really good promo. It was a really good promo.
I would actually give, not that I like the whole laying down thing, and I'll get more into that later, but I'd actually give, between that and Russo's promo, I'd give the whole segment like a 2-star rating. I could get down with that. I can get down with the
that.
Historical significance of everything. But
because for the last Bash of the Beach, it definitely leaves everyone still talking about it to this day.
Yeah, but Hogan saying, this is why the company's in the shape it's in. I can honestly say I quit watching with the finger poke of doom, and that was all Hogan. So Hulk Hogan, you're a hypocrite. Yeah. And this will be the one time. There's probably some things we haven't heard, but this is the one time you will see me side with Vince Russo on something. And
it's very rare.
I hope Jim Cornette doesn't come out of the ether and just smack me with a tennis racket for saying that.
He probably will. He'll probably get you in your sleep.
I totally side with Russo on this deal. That whole
whether his story was even that don't work for me, brother. It's famous. Whether even half of Russo's story is true or not, it doesn't really matter. I'm still on this side, man. This is a lot of garbage, a lot of hooey, and just shameful. And Jarrett knows it to this day. He talks about it. But I agree. I'd give it probably about a 2 stars because that's a masterful promo for real. Whether that's really was known by Hogan or not doesn't really matter. But Hogan never set foot in the company again. So that was one of those things. Then he went on to say that he's there because of people like Booker and Jeff, and that they work their asses off. They're always there. They don't cause trouble like that. And so Jeff Jarrett's the real champion still. And he's going to face Booker tonight because they both deserve it. They both work their asses off. And Booker is going to get his shot. And you'll notice that the belt that Jarrett comes out and gives to Hogan is actually a different belt. It's a copy, and it's got a little bit more leather around the outsides of it, and then the one he comes out with later is the real one.
Been at the top.
It's been at the top. I was gonna tell you. I was gonna ask if you noticed that.
I've also heard. I've not been to Hogan's surf shop. I've driven by it on vacation in Tampa, but I should have stopped. I guess. Yeah, he's got that. I can't remember who I heard that from, but that copy of that belt is in his shop.
Well, Conrad and Jeff Jarrett talk about it on the podcast.
Maybe that's where I heard it. I bet it was, because I do listen to Jarrett just a little bit.
Yeah, I do too every now and then. So next up, Goldberg versus Kevin Nash. This is a singles match for Scott Hall's WCW contract. And if Kevin Nash wins, obviously Scott Hall is saved. And if Goldberg, who's pretty much playing a heel at this time, which is kind of weird, but he plays the heel at this time, if he wins, then Scott Hall's gone. He's terminated. And, Kevin Nash running the NWO, or still kind of running the Wolfpack, I think, at this point. Was that still
I think so.
Something like that. But Scott Steiner was supposed to be on his side on this, and Scott Steiner does end up coming out. Typical big guy match, Goldberg match. Goldberg sold okay in some areas. I'm a big Goldberg fan. I know a lot of people aren't. I do recognize his faults for sure. I'll never not acknowledge the faults of Bill Goldberg in the ring. But I think, especially now that the guy's, since he's come back, and I think he's got more appreciation for everything, and he's having fun, or he had some fun. I think it means a little bit more to him now with his kid and everything than it did back then. But even in this match, he did okay. He sold some. Kind of a typical match. It probably needed a few more minutes, but you don't need a lot more time. But I think, like you said earlier, an extra 3 minutes would have been
2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah. I think you have a little bit, like I said, you have a little screw job at the end. And this one, more gaga, but it's a better swerve than earlier. Scott Steiner actually turns on Nash and sides with Goldberg, and they hook up, which I don't even remember, which I think would have been a cool little tag team. I don't think it lasted, but that'd be a pretty cool little tag team for a minute. Yeah, for sure. There wasn't too much to talk about in this match. Worst looking jackhammer ever. He's got those long, lanky legs trying to get him up in the air. You can't do it. I mean, but you know what? I've seen Paul White do it. Big Show did it with him a couple times. He got him up, and Paul helped
I give it a star and a half overall.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think it had enough time, and it was a little bit sloppy.
I'll probably give it 1 3/4. I don't mind the swerve here, even though that we've already been. It wouldn't have been as bad if the Gaga before this in the show wasn't so plentiful. The spear looked all right, like it always does. Yeah, like you said, jackhammer, but he's dealing with Nash here. Some of those bigger guys, it's hard for him to do. Some of those guys are athletic enough to help him out, and some of them aren't or won't. But a nice little surprise. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember the ins and the outs of the business and in the context of everything around it going on from back then. So I think as an old fan coming back and watching this, I'm like, oh wow, Scott Hall's he's gone. It's like they actually went through with it, because you do something like that nowadays. You're like, well, who's winning? It's all at work, baby. But like I said, I don't remember. Scott Hall might have been out because of alcohol or drugs or some injury or something at the time, and it was just done, which is very possible.
He actually showed up for a couple of ECW shows in the fall, so he was gone, completely gone.
Oh, he was gone. Yeah. It's okay. Just typical. So moving on, we get to Booker T versus Jeff Jarrett. And this is probably my favorite match of the night, I think.
Yeah. It's the best match of the night.
It's the best match of the night. The guys did a great job. Do I think they absolutely tore the house down? No, but it was really good. It reminded
me of like an old school Raw main event. I don't think it had quite enough time to be this epic fight, but something with a Rock or Foley or something where they gave 15 minutes to, and they used they used their time as wisely as they could.
Yeah. Booker T already had a match earlier in the night, but he still does another 13 minutes, a little over 13 minutes here. Without all the confusion and weirdness, earlier this might have been an even bigger moment for Booker, but it's still a big moment, and he beats Jarrett. With there's some gaga in it here and there, but I expect that. A lot of kickouts, whatever. I give the match a 3, though. I actually enjoy the match, and a good first title win for Booker.
Yeah,
even
I'd give this match. I'd probably give it 3 1/4. I really enjoyed it. After all the junk we'd seen, it was a real good palate cleanser for the end of the night.
It was, like I said, considering everything.
It was nice seeing the fans. Did you see the fans when Booker, even whenever Russo announced that Booker was going to be in there, did you see the fans pop like during that promo? And then when he finally won it and the crowd just came up, they were ready for something. That's one instance where Russo was 100% correct. I don't think Hogan would have got him that pop at that point in his career.
Oh, no. And Hogan got a little decent pop there when he actually showed up and did his little speech there to Russo. But I think when everybody kind of realized what was going on, they're like, well, at least we don't get completely gypped out of a match here. Lowest point of the night, definitely the graveyard match. The wedding gown match was kind of too, other than Stacey.
Hardcore match.
The hardcore match was pretty gaga. High points of the night. That first opening match was good, even though it had a lot of gaga. And as a kid, I loved Goldberg, so I would have been like all over it. But and I like Kevin Nash too. But that main event really wrapped it up, and that tag match was all right. So
yeah.
I'd say what I said at the beginning. Overall, about a C plus.
I would
decent effort to get out of all the Hogan nonsense.
Yeah, I would even throw in the Steiner, as bad as the finish was, the Steiner Awesome match and the Canyon Booker match as being pretty decent.
Yeah.
There's like 5 matches there on that show I like quite a bit.
Yeah. So really, overall, didn't turn out near as bad as it could have. Or and we'll get into some more Russo WCW down the line, I'm sure.
What'd you say? You gave it a C minus?
Yeah, I got a C plus. That in between there, about C.
I go C.
That's solid C.
It's not as bad as people think it is. There's some bad, but it's not awful.
No, it's just all there is some bad, but it's overshadowed pretty easily by the controversy. And even that, along with that, you get Booker's first title and a decent match, and Jeff Jarrett, which I'm learning this more now as an adult, going back. Jeff Jarrett's really underrated, man. He had a lot of nonsense back in the WCW days, but he really is, for everything he's done in the wrestling business from the beginning to the end. He is a good worker. He's got a good business mind, a good wrestling mind. And if you listen to his podcast, if you don't, I'd highly recommend it, because you get to kind of know the real Jarrett and kind of how his mind actually works and
the ins and outs of trying to start a company out of nothing.
Yeah. He's not perfect, but he's really underrated, and I admire him so much more now, especially as a heel. And he's back on TV right now, and he had a match on Raw or WrestleMania or something like that, Royal Rumble. I think it was Raw a few years ago, right after he got inducted in the Hall of Fame, and looked kind of rough. He did okay, but man, I tell you what, when he came back for that last Ric Flair match with him and Jay Lethal, he looked so good. He is back in, like, at 55 or 6 or whatever he is. He is back in great shape. He plays the heel so well. He gave Ric Flair a lot of time when he was struggling. And now I guess he's on to AEW playing some heel stuff with Jay Lethal. And I haven't got to see much of that because I about refuse to watch that show, other than for MJF and a couple others.
FTR.
They're just a bunch of nonsense cold. And after the CM Punk issues and stuff, I'm not I was never the biggest CM Punk fan, but I've never been more on his side than I was after that media scrum. Because whether he did the right thing or not, man, those guys set him up and played that, and they're bitches. Anyway, I won't get into that. That's a conversation maybe for another show or something. So
I'm also a pretty big Jeff Jarrett fan. He's one of the I've met a few wrestlers, in my life, and he's one of them, and he was really cool.
Really, I haven't
like an autograph signing type thing.
That's cool. That's cool. Seems like a nice enough guy, really. So I know we talked about last time. I mentioned that we were getting back into the Scream talk. We're still waiting on our group to come back, or at least Kenny coming back to get into that, because I feel like we want to start with something we want to finish with the crew. You know what I mean? So even though we didn't do that again, we will do that as soon as we can. We will finish that series up and then move on to something else. We'll get into some more movie talk. But we're just, like I said, we're filling in some. We wanted to talk about wrestling anyway. So I feel like this was another good event. We've been talking about Bash of the Beach for a while. So moving on to something good that I remember being pretty good. I think we stay in the same year next time, and we talk about Backlash 2000. It's a little bit before Bash at the Beach happened that year, but a good. It's the post WrestleMania pay-per-view, and a big night. So one specific return, and the crowd was pretty hot from what I remember. I need to go back and rewatch it again for the show. So I think we need to cover that in the next one and review that.
Yeah, that one is as good as this one is bad. So it was very, very, very decent show. So I'll be happy to talk about that one.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And that very well could be coming your way in the next one. We'll see where it goes. Like I said, we will be discussing Scream 2 and 3 very soon too, as soon as we can. We'll get back into that. Do you have anything else you want to talk about or mention before we wrap it up?
I would just say, for those of you that remember Bash at the Beach 2000 as being just absolutely horrible, and parts of it are, go back and rewatch it, through a critical eye, and there might be something there that you actually find that you enjoy.
Yeah, because if you can find something in today's stuff you can enjoy, I think you can go back and find some stuff back then that you can enjoy for sure. It definitely brought back some memories. Not the best of ones, but there's still some of that old alumni or legend Hall of Famer guys that are there that they're in their prime doing their thing.
Yeah.
Except for Nash, I think he was phoning it in, but I still like Nash, but he's just a phone it in dude.
He didn't tear a quad at least.
Yeah, he is a phone it in fool. Yeah, he didn't tear a quad. So I think we're going to wrap it up now. Next time we will hopefully be covering either Scream or Backlash or both. We'll see how that goes. But be looking forward to that. Again, like I mentioned earlier, you can find us all our episodes on pretty much all your major podcasts: Google, Spotify, Pandora, iHeart, Apple, all that good stuff. You can also find us on YouTube, and we'll be posting video stuff up there. You can also find our old podcasts episodes in the link section of our YouTube channel as well, Macho Movie Madness. And you can maybe check out some of those old movie podcasts we did a few years ago before we relaunched here a few weeks ago. So be sure to check that out. Those are some pretty decent episodes, and we look forward to continuing that now that we've got it going again. So I think we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you guys all down the road.